Thanks for joining us on the show, School Zone, here today. We have, for listeners that aren't watching on a video, we are sitting in front of a green screen, which I'm really excited about. I'm here at McAlester High School. We've got Bret Lalli, who's a teacher, teaches robotics, aviation, and computer science coding, specifically Python, and then Dewayne Hampton as well. You are the vice principal of the high school and also teaching AP US history.
Yes.
So, so we got lots of stuff we're going to cover in the show today. I'm going to spend most of the time on serious topics, which isn't my style. But we're going to focus on robotics, we're going to talk about aviation, we're going to talk about Python, talk about sort of the overall vision for the district, and lots of really exciting things going on. But I always like to start with the most important topics. And you're teaching AP US history with Ryan Walters.
Yes, I am.
Ryan's has been on the show before, and he's often a target of our derision slightly. You know, we admire the guy, but you know, he's teaching AP US history, and does anyone really know where Ryan buys his ties?
I think that's a good question. Because
Does he shop in the junior section, do you think, or what?
Yeah.
I was thinking Baby Gap, but
Baby Gap.
That, or maybe they're just belts where he takes off the loop, and because I've never seen a tie actually that skinny.
And I've also wondered how he knits them so perfectly, because
Maybe his wife is giving some tips or something.
I don't know. I could see him over there crocheting feverishly.
And, you know, with his new position, I'm hoping maybe he can afford the extra couple inches on the pants. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that is a definite minus for him. He doesn't have to worry about the bottom of his pants getting wet.
Yeah, I know. You know, I mean, it's a big benefit. So
Yes.
yeah. So I was glad to see the Ryan Walters Day on Facebook for part of your homecoming week.
Our students loved it.
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. He's a pretty funny guy. So. All right, Ryan, that one was for you. And then there was one other thing that we just heard the announcements here before we started the podcast, which was have a Buffalo Day. So I want to know what the heck a Buffalo Day is.
I think it's very open-ended.
Is it?
And it's intentionally that way. And that's a product of our, the former high school principal here, now our current superintendent, Mr. Randy Hughes, that is a saying that he has had for years, even when Coach Lalli was in high school here.
Okay.
It's been used since then, so we continue to use it today.
I dig it. So I'm going to take it as have Buffalo today. So
Okay.
I did have Buffalo Restaurant. It was pretty good a couple weeks ago. It was
There you
like
go.
fancy filet. So I've had the burgers and whatnot too. So there you go. All right, well, let's jump in. So here at School Zone, we like to talk about innovative, cool things going on inside schools. And we just walked around the school this morning.
I apologize, we do need the following students to the upstairs conference room.
Yes.
Israel Ruiz, Angel
And I don't know how
Beltor,
long this
Neely
list will be,
Macias,
So there we go.
Brian
It's
Calderon,
about 9 names long.
Ana E. Fernandez,
You know.
Ana E. Fernandez, Sarah E. Fernandez, Omar Mendez, Derry Martinez,
Oh, just keep
and
on going.
Hiram
All right.
Rodriguez to
So-
the upstairs
so
conference
we,
room, please.
You know, we got a chance to walk around and see your classroom
Mhm.
where you've got the Python coding going on. Kids are working on robotics in there. We were looking at some of the aviation, and on social media we'll put some of the pictures where you guys just built like the hot air balloons. It's really cool, and the drones you're working on. But tell us, like, how did you get into this? Like, I'm really intrigued for schools that are sort of thinking about how would I start an aviation program or a robotics program. It's like, well, what was sort of your entree into getting into this space?
Well, to be completely honest, the genesis of this was about 4 or 5 years ago when we started going to Texas Instruments Inspire Navigator training.
Okay.
And it started to push us to be innovative in what we wanted to do, and we started trying to be innovative in our math classrooms. And we attended a international conference in San Antonio 2 years ago, and we came back with, wow, we have to do more because we can, and these kids deserve more. And so last year we started a robotics program, which ended up being about a semester learning how to work with the TI rovers, and then a semester where we worked with Amazon. We partnered with Amazon for a Python curriculum. And so we didn't go compete last year, but we learned engineering skills. We learned some basic coding skills in TI Basic as well as Python. This year, Mr. Hughes came to me and said, the middle of last year said, hey, Ada is doing this aviation program. We need to look into it. And so we started looking into it. and we decided this is a really good program. It's a program that we feel like our kids, if they stay with it for the entirety, can basically walk out and be really close to having a private pilot's license and being well on their way to jumping into the aerospace industry. We then decided to partner with FIRST and change our robotics company because there was a big community service aspect and a big planning aspect outside of just building the robots. I mentioned the engineering notebook, having to plan a budget, having to make a plan to sustain. And we continued our partnership with Amazon for the Python class. One cool thing that came out of the Texas Instruments partnership, which I'm speaking for the second time at their international conference this coming March.
Cool. Where is that?
It's going to be in Dallas. Last year was in Baltimore.
Okay.
And I got to speak at that one. And we're doing a series of podcasts for them, or webinars, sorry, for them to kind of, the reason we're doing that is because we did the first ever Rover Innovator Challenge in the world last year. We innovated that, and they were really excited about that idea, and they want us to share that idea with other schools and try to get that going on a bigger scale. And so just that all fits into the innovation of how we got to this program. All of those stepping stones and all of the people that we talked to along the way and the partnerships that we made got us in the innovation mindset and really pushed us to try to push the envelope and do things maybe nobody else has done. And we always push to, I mentioned to you, we understand what the average is, but we want to be above average. And so whatever we're taking, we're trying to make it even better. We're finding different ways to try to improve on whatever that plan is.
Cool. So let's take a step back here. So you went to the Texas Instrument event like 4 or 5 years ago.
About 2 years ago.
Okay, it was 2 years ago. That was the first, or what was the first event?
The first event was a series of training
Okay.
using a handheld system that we have in all of our math classrooms.
And so at the time, you're a math teacher?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Up until last year, I taught Algebra 1.
Okay, so you're an Algebra 1 teacher. So really, this year is the first full year where you've sort of jumped in.
Yes.
So in the meantime, you're learning, you're getting trained, how do you decide we're going to start? So robotics class was the first class that you guys started last year. How did you decide you're going to do that, and like what were the hurdles you had to jump through to get that done?
The first part of that was they introduced us to their Rover system, and we were the first group in the world to get trained on it, our Gear Up cadre. We were the second group in the world to get some, and currently we have 60 on campus. And so basically what that is that's just coding. There can be some engineering, but the majority of it is just coding. And we got to thinking, why couldn't we add the engineering part of it in addition to the coding? And so we started looking at ways to do that. And what we ultimately came up with was we wanted to jump into a robotics league. And so being in public school, obviously the biggest and first hurdle was funding. How are we going to make that happen? We came across some funding that helped us get started through the NYCP grant here on our campus.
And that's a federal Native Youth, what's the CP stand for?
Native Youth Community Project, I
New
believe.
Youth, okay, you're right, okay, yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
I think it's Native Youth, but okay, Sarah, if we can remember to put that in the show notes, what the NYCP federal program is. But that gave you some startup dollars to start getting just equipment and stuff, right?
Yeah, and so that allowed us to buy the equipment and the tools, and we're working on t-shirts and getting a banner for our program so we can market our program when we go to the other schools. And we did the Eastern Oklahoma State College and Career Fair in the fall a couple of months ago, and we talked to about 18 to 1900 kids from this area about our program. And so we wanted to be able to promote our program.
So then you start a robotics program, so if I'm a student interested, like, how do I get into the class? What are the prerequisites for me to get into the class?
This year there wasn't any. This coming year we're going to do an application process,
Okay.
just because of the nature of the resources we poured into the class at this point. And we're going to do an application process, and we haven't really fleshed out the guidelines of what that looks like yet, as far as what we're going to take, because we've had successes with a kid that's in the valedictory race, and we've had successes with a kid that at one point was failing 6 classes and now he's not failing any because he got hooked up in the robotics program.
Yep.
And so that's
It's amazing when kids get excited about learning.
Exactly.
They do, right?
And so that's where we're at right now, is trying to figure out with the application process what are going to be the guidelines.
'Cause you don't want just all the smart kids or the good
Yes.
kids or the.
We want a good mixture.
Yeah.
Because right now, the kids that are struggling in school may be struggling because they're not interested in something. And if we can find something that they're interested in and they get their grades up, who knows, they may go to work for NASA one day. Right now, they're not passing classes because they don't like school or they're not interested in it, but this could be the spark that gets them into a career. And that's always been our goal. How can we get kids into the workforce in the most quality lifestyle possible?
Cool. So let's go through the robotics program first. So you start the robotics class. Where do you get your curriculum?
So the first Inspire website has a decent curriculum where it basically taught us kind of what gear ratios were, and this is a servo motor, this is a planetary, a DC motor, and kind of gave us some foundational stuff. And then from there, we took their engineering notebook guidelines, and we've been working on both of those projects. I gave them the base knowledge, and then I've been we've been creating the curriculum as we go. The curriculum, I don't have necessarily assignments where we sit down and we write a paper or whatever else. We take notes and we reflect on our day, and they get a grade for that. And then their test grades are the competitions. Going to the competitions and participating in the competitions. If they can't make it, then they have to write a 2-page research paper in the field of robotics. And so our curriculum is very fluid in what we teach. There's not necessarily a set of lesson plans for the class because it changes day to day based on the needs of our team and where we're at going into the next competition.
Cool. So for the robotics program then, is this cross-section of 9 through 12, or is this
Yes.
more upperclassmen?
It's probably a good mixture.
Okay.
I would say majority are 9th graders and 12th graders.
Okay.
But I have a good mixture of all four right now.
And these are just elective courses, or does this align with some of the required coursework that students have?
This is counted as a computer class.
As a computer class? Okay, cool. Now, is there any challenge when you run into, because I know the robotics requires some coding, are there some math skills that kids have to have coming in, or are they learning math in this? Or?
Yeah, I mean, depending on kind of where you go with the design of your robot and the way you write your code, the way that we're choosing to write our code this year, there's a lot of variables involved and understanding how variables work and plugging values in, but also as we're engineering the robot, they've got to look at measurements, they've got to take measurements, they've got to draw sketches to scale. I don't let them do anything to the robot unless they submit a scale drawing with all the measurements. So when we first started drawing, we had kind of a bidding war, so to speak, of the design of the claw mechanism. And so they had to submit to me why it worked, and they had to get all the measurements. They took all the pieces, fabricated it the best they could. And so we're doing measurements, we're doing geometry, we're doing algebra, some lower end stuff more than the upper end stuff, but definitely hitting some skills, but also some writing skills. They're having to write and think and reflect every day on what they've done and set a goal for tomorrow.
So this is applied, I mean, we'd call it project-based learning.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think that's exciting.
And if they have to write the paper, if they don't get to go to the competition, they're having to do research and look up the history of robotics and look up innovative people in the field of robotics. So they're doing some history and some research in addition to math and just writing and reflecting. So.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so last year you were an algebra teacher last year.
Yes, sir. With one section of robotics.
So you added the robotics, and then whose decision, because now your schedule is, you told me you get 2 robotics classes, 2 aviation classes, and a class where you teach in Python.
Mm-hmm.
How the heck do you do that, and whose idea was it, and then how did you get the other people to go along with it?
Well, we felt like in order for this program to be as successful as we felt like it could be, we had to devote a full-time teacher to these particular programs. And so we started throwing around the idea of how that looked, and we spent hours with the math department chair on how we were going to adjust math classes with the staffing that we had.
What do you mean by, why do you have to adjust the math classes?
Well,
just to cover your courses?
Yeah, to cover my courses, to free up as many hours as we could with the existing staff. And we came up with a couple of solutions, and we just kind of brainstormed, and we said it would just be so much better if we could just get one more teacher. And one more teacher would help us to be able to do this program in its entirety.
So when you say we, this is the math department saying this?
Yeah, so I was working alongside with Tim Collier, our department chair, and Tracy Matthews, who's been a geometry teacher for us for a couple of years, but has taught for quite a few years. And so we kind of worked as a group along with Delilah Rodriguez, our STEM director this year, about how this looked and trying to do justice to the school, obviously, and make sure our kids would get the necessary math
Teachers
classes
and
that
students,
they
we
wanted
had
or needed,
turned into the office there for a Chevrolet.
and not try to cut the legs out of those programs, but also not try to cut the legs out of the other local programs we had. And so we're really trying to do justice with everybody across the board in this planning process.
I gotta ask, because I only taught for a couple of years, but I don't think I would have had the flexibility. How did you, I mean, it seems like this is a testament to the administration giving the department the flexibility to, think creatively about their resources and to, to come back on that. We don't always like to say nice things about administrators, but it seems like that one's due. So,
I will give props to our administrators. I thought that they have supported us for years, not just in this, but Mr. Hampton and Ms. Hames and Ms. Tubbs in the office and Mr. Hughes, the superintendent, across the board, they're basically saying, you're being innovative, you're doing really good things, we want to support you in any way that we can. And so allowing us to even have the conversation to begin with was huge, and even to propose this is what we would like to do. Here are a couple of ideas that we came up with.
So Dewayne, how do you build a culture where the staff, one, feels empowered to do that, and then, I'm not sure if you know this, but here in Oklahoma, we often have resource constraints with funding. I mean, how do you, when your staff comes to you and says, we need an additional position because we want to teach all this stuff, how do you not choke on your budget?
Well, this started as a conversation. Like I said, Mr. Hughes brought this to them. They kicked it around, brought it back to us, and then we were able to go to Mr. Hughes. Our superintendent has been phenomenal, and he said, if we need to add a position, let's add a position, and that's what we made the decision to do. Obviously, if you anything that's great takes a little bit of sacrifice, and we were willing to do that because when we first sat down and looked at the idea of adding this program, we knew that the person that needed to go in that position needed to be a dynamic teacher, needed to be somebody who was passionate about the subject area, and who, especially in the robotics world, that's almost a competitive thing these days. Mm-hmm. And so Coach Lalli has coached football for us, coached baseball, did various coaching activities for us. He checked off all these boxes for us, and we felt like that he was the best fit to be that person that, quote unquote, was added in that field. We trusted him, and he has delivered exponentially, and so we're very proud of Coach Lalli as a former graduate of McAlester High School, as an alumni. He has a vested interest in seeing this program succeed, not only for him but for us too. So, well, all the credit really goes to Ms. Tubbs, Mr. Hughes, and Mr. Lalli. I'm just the person who helps shuffle paper in the office. So really the credit is due with those three people, because it was their vision. Mr. Hughes provided us with the money to deliver the vision, and Coach Lalli has delivered on that. So the credit goes there.
Awesome. So that's robotics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you add aviation to the mix then?
A lot of prayer and sleepless nights.
I'm sure.
So again, Mr. Hughes came to us and said, this is a program that's going around, we want to look into it. And so we started looking into it, and initially I was like, man, this is way out of my element, and I'm not really sure that I'm qualified or whatever. I knew it was going to take a lot of time to get the program off the ground, and so I was a little hesitant at first, but as we started looking into it and we started realizing that aviation is the second largest career field in the second largest industry in Oklahoma, we said, why would we not? Again, I've said this multiple times, everything we're doing is to get our kids into the workforce as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and to get them to reach the potential of whatever they think they and want to do. And realistically, those two fields are something that we weren't really exposing our kids to. And hearing that stat told me, and the shortage of pilots and people working in the aerospace industry told me, we have to offer this. This is not even an option. And I will tell you, it's been the lion's share of my planning and my work time since last March, when we first started looking into getting this curriculum to prepare this. And then bringing it on board, just everything we do, the cross-curricular nature of it, and everything we do with it, the project-based learning, the engineering, writing the papers, having to develop original thoughts and not just copy and paste, which, is a
In the
big.
internet world is a hard thing to teach kids, right?
Yes.
And so look, we were over there, you were showing me in the classroom the hot air balloons,
Mhm.
right? And then you showed me some of the, I don't know, those dioramas, what you describe them, but where the kids were doing projects
Mhm.
related to history and aviation. This is cross-curricular,
Absolutely.
project-based learning. Again, where'd you get, is that curriculum you've developed, or? where'd you
No,
get that?
so we were granted through the Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association out of Maryland a curriculum called You Can Fly Too. It's a 4-year program. It teaches them kind of the history of aviation, and then it gets into the actual skills needed to pilot an aircraft over the 4-year plan. And so our goal is to implement that 4-year plan and see, we've got quite a few freshmen in this class this year. I would say out of our 40 to 45 kids, probably 30 to 35 of them are freshmen. And so they would be eligible to complete the 4-year program. And that puts them in a really good place to get ready for the private pilot's license, and then also go into the aviation industry in any capacity, whether it be aeronautical engineering or commercial pilots. I have a couple of students that are looking at multiple different areas of that field. One's going to be a drone pilot in the military, a couple of commercial pilots, a couple of aerospace engineers. A couple of them even started talking about, I was going to be a mechanic for vehicles, but now I think I want to maybe go into being a mechanic for aircrafts. I think that'd be way more worthwhile and rewarding. And so just giving them those opportunities. And so that curriculum is the baseline for what we do. But we've added a couple of things to that. So we had a drone set on campus that we tried to implement last year into a STEM program, but it didn't work out for the timing and the resources. So in addition to that curriculum, our students are building a drone, and we have 5 of them built, most of the way built, and they're learning safety, they're learning the engineering that goes behind a drone, they're learning the basic components of a drone, they're learning how to work on a drone, and ultimately we're going to train them on how to fly drones. And then, as I mentioned before the show, our semester project, if we get to that point, I'm hoping we can get to that point with the fluidity of the year, is going to be what we're going to call the Drone Olympics, and it's going to be their ability to fly and compete in flying basically through an obstacle course or a series of challenges.
It's gonna be like a crashing in the sky kind of thing.
I hope not, because that set was expensive, and if we crash them in the sky, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't think you wanted me in high school doing this. So.
Me either, I'll just be honest with
They wouldn't have trusted me to do that.
Yeah, no, my buddies and I would have been slamming them into
Right.
each other, so, yeah.
you. Well, and the cool thing about these drones that I forgot to throw in is they're not just line of sight drones, they're first person view drones. And so the person piloting them will basically have what looks like 3D goggles on, but it will be a camera. And so they're able to fly out of line of sight and be able to control the drone.
Whoa.
So it's not just like, we're not going to Walmart and buying a $30 Mattel drone. I mean, this is pretty big time stuff, I think. So we're excited, and we're hoping we can get that going.
And Mr. Hughes had talked about, he had showed at a board meeting, he had showed a video, and he discusses quite often. As a matter of fact, you may be proud of me for mentioning this, but he went to a conference and came back and was raving about Uber drones. And he talked about in so many years, our kids are going to be picked up and dropped off with Uber drones. And so
Flying drones?
flying drones that pick
Like
people up.
Jetsons,
Like drones that pick people up and deliver them to places.
Which, when I first heard this, I was thinking like
And-
roller coaster harness, like strap me in and let my feet dangle. But I think it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. But initially, I was like, that sounds fun.
And at first, it's like, there's no way. And then he shows the video to the board, and to the public, and it is a real thing. And it's only a matter of time. Now, I personally will not be getting in an Uber drone.
Likewise.
Well,
I'm down.
But it's a matter of time. And again, this is a credit to them that we're getting on the cutting edge of this sort of technology, because by the time our kids graduate, they will have a drone pilot's license, which not many high schools can offer that or say that. And we're excited about that. So our kids, as soon as they leave, we talk about college and career ready, they will be career ready. They could walk into a partnership with the Choctaw Nation or any local business around here and immediately be able to pilot a drone.
Well, and one thing of interest to follow up on that, the Choctaw Nation actually got a contract, one of 10 in the country, and they're putting their production plant about 30 miles south of here. And so,
That's why I brought up Choctaw
Yeah,
Nation a
yes,
second ago.
exactly.
essentially, I mean, we haven't even started the discussion of partnership with them, but
Yeah.
if we get to that point when that's built, we could be putting people into their industry right out of high school, or,
That's
whatever, and they can stay around here and work in this field.
And that's a credit to our community as a whole, that they see that this is something that they know their children need to take an interest in. Because when you pick up the newspaper and you read about an aerospace company not wanting to build a plant here due to a lack of a workforce, think programs like this are the answer to that. The question has always been, what are you going to do? And the answer is right in front of us. We're educating these kids before they ever leave here and preparing them for those jobs and careers.
I think that's fantastic. So you get 2 classes on robotics,
Mhm.
2 classes on aviation, and then a class on Python. And for those not aware, that is not a snake. That's,
No.
that's a computer science.
If it
language.
was, I wouldn't teach it, because I am terrified of snakes.
Me too, yeah, I don't mind admitting it. So why Python?
So we talked to a couple of people that are in the industry that are working for big time coding and technology companies. And what they told us as we researched kind of what this coding language would be, they said Python works as a glue and works as a foundation for any coding language. And they said it's very similar to Latin. If you can speak Latin, you can speak 6 or 7 languages. With Python, if you can code in Python, the syntax or the phrasing or the words that you're going to use are going to be a little bit different, but the structure is going to be pretty close to the same thing. And so it was a good springboard, again, to get our kids ready to go work in the workforce if they needed to be C++ or Java or whatever they needed specifically for their career field. They had a foundation with structure and something to back them up with. And so that is a partnership with Amazon Future Engineers that we have. We were awarded this curriculum through their program. And so they have a really good connection where if you're interested in that, they have scholarships and partnerships with other industries for internships and with their industry, with Amazon itself. And so our kids coming out of this program could walk into an internship at Amazon and go to work for Amazon or a company similar to
This is like a 1 semester, 1 year course that they take?
So the way we offer it is it's a 1-year course. The curriculum through Amazon Future Engineers also has a class that's more of an introductory class, and then has an AP Java class that we could offer later on if we wanted to.
Okay.
Right now, just for the sake of scheduling, we don't have it. But it's something that we would like to build up eventually and roll out a class worth of Python and a class worth of AP Java students.
That'd be cool. How many kids do you have in the Python class?
Right now, we're just a small handful. I think we have 4 or 5 in it.
Okay.
But it's something that we kind of started a little late, and so next year we're going to really push it and advertise, and we've got a lot of middle school kids that are interested in this thing. So my goal personally next year is to get it up to double digits, get it up to 10 to 15, and then try to continue to just grow the numbers every year.
So grow the numbers in Python, then the course, kids that complete the Python course, where can they go from that? Like, what's the next step?
So it's a pretty introductory course. From there, they can continue, when they go to college, they can continue to research Python, study Python. They can really do it on their own. There's so many resources out there if they wanted to, but this allows them to go to work in that industry and at least have some beginning knowledge, so they're not just walking off the street into an entry-level position with nothing, and they're having to be taught. They're already a step ahead. Now, to get into the serious part of that, they would have to go get a computer science degree.
Sure.
Obviously, to go to work for Amazon or something, some company like that. But it gets them started. It puts them a step up over anybody else just walking off the street.
Thinking,
Yeah.
from a coding language perspective. So, can you code in Python?
Barely. I code about as well as I write as a math teacher.
There you go. So, that's a big hurdle for a lot of people. How do you get the bravado or the bravery or whatever? Where you're gonna, I don't really know it, but I'm gonna teach it.
Basically, I guess the most honest way I can say this is
2 girls are fighting a cold right now, so I'm a little tired myself. Kudos to you. I want to talk a little more about so Dewayne mentioned the competitive nature of some of these programs. I'm somewhat familiar with some of the robotics competitions. I've also heard of the aviation some competitions. I don't know if you guys you're involved with some of that stuff.
We haven't gone competitive with the aviation yet, but next year we're going to try to get into, there's a drone racing league out of Tulsa, I believe. Okay. And so we're going to try to get into something similar to that. And if it doesn't work out, we'll make our own.
Cool.
It's kind of what we do.
One of the other things I think would be an interesting component of this that kind of piggybacks off of it is, esports is the fastest growing sport, one of the fastest growing industries inside the competitive nature of Oklahoma, and we do not have that as of yet, but depending on how some of this goes, these are the same types of kids who would enjoy those kinds of activities. And so I could see more things being offered here for our high school students.
And that's something that we talked about, with it being sanctioned by the Oklahoma Secondary Schools Athletic Association.
There's discussion of it.
There's discussion, getting sanctioned. Our athletic director has come to us and said, hey, we need to look at this, and we've talked about doing this. And the real deal with that is the biggest hurdle, this is the biggest hurdle by far, is the funding for the stuff, but how do you manage the logistics of running that? Because when you say, hey, we have an esports team and we're going to play video games to practice, 850 out of 850 kids are going to want to come practice.
Sure.
And so how do we manage the logistics of that? And so that's something that we've talked about, we've thought about. But, we'll see where it goes from there.
And there will be coach auditions. We'll have a Madden tournament or something to do, coach auditions.
Yeah, if it's Madden, I feel good about it. Probably anything else. I'm not a gamer by nature, so if it's anything else, I'm probably in trouble.
My kids are totally into gaming, so.
Yeah. Well, talk about the robotics competitions, because I think some folks are familiar, but some aren't. So you guys are doing first
Yeah,
competition.
we're doing first.
Which is robotics, and you've got essentially like I don't know what I'd call like a battle studio there, right? Like that one room?
Yeah, well, we were blessed with an opportunity.
There's probably a technical term for it?
Well, it's just a course is basically what it's called. And so so the course can stay, so the foundation, and then the game elements change every year. And we don't know that till the big kickoff in September, the first week in September. This year, first partnered with Star Wars. And so we're doing, it was really cool because Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, introduced the game at the big kickoff for us.
Wow.
So kind of the challenge this year is essentially we're building a skyscraper similar to the skyscrapers on Coruscant, which is where the Galactic, or the Empire and the Chancellor and everybody live in the Star Wars universe. And so it's kind of like the New York City of the Star Wars universe.
This has gone super nerd real fast here.
Hey, it's okay. I'm there. I'm right there. I'm right there.
It can get way worse. I'm just trying to keep it G-rated here for this. So basically,
Force is strong with Coach Lalli.
Yeah.
It is.
You don't expect a football coach. I got to tell you, you're a football coach by nature, right?
Yeah.
I don't expect a football coach to go quite nerd so fast, and I'm impressed.
I will tell you, I thought it was going to be a hard transition from varsity football offensive line coach last year to robotics coach this year, but it was just natural. It just worked.
That's awesome.
So the competitions, we have to basically build a skyscraper out of what are about 4 inch by 6 inch Lego blocks, and we have to stack those up. We have to collect them and stack those up. And so our competition season can go 2 ways. You can either go to 2 qualifying tournaments, or you can go to 1 league that has a accompanying qualifying tournament and another qualifier. We chose to go the league route because we get a lot of extra practice. There's 3 league matches and a qualifier, plus a second qualifier that you sign up for instead of just 2 qualifiers. And so up to this point, we've gone to 1 league match, which we learned a lot of lessons. We learned a lot of rules we didn't know. We lost 3 or 4 matches because of rules that we didn't know. And that rule that we didn't know cost us the highest scoring match at that point in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay.
And so we learned those lessons in the first one, which was just a league match. And the second one we went to was a qualifier in Ada. And being our first time, we were just like, we're just happy to be here. We're going to get Chick-fil-A after, and it's going to be really fun. And, we're all smiles. And we ended up, one of our teams finished as the runner-up alliance, and the other team walked away with an award and finished second in another award. And so we were pretty excited about that. We definitely had technical difficulties, and you could definitely tell we were a first-year team. But we walked away with hardware, and our kids were like, wow, we actually are good at this.
And I mean, look, we all want to be number one, right? But really cares if you win, right? Like to me, more
Yeah.
this is like, what are you learning? What are you getting out of this?
Absolutely.
How do you get kids to build? I think it's really cool. Oh gosh,
I will tell you along those lines, every once in a while, I have to turn off the offensive line coach.
I'm sure
Every once in a while,
yeah.
it's like, you guys have to get this done. We have to go compete on Friday. But it's like, but really, it's okay if we don't quite get it finished as long as we're learning stuff along the way. And so, you know, it's just hard to turn that switch off sometimes.
Yep. Now, when we met beforehand, you were talking about potentially starting an after-school program. Would you still keep the class?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And so the idea with that, actually, we're still kicking that around, still brainstorming, but we'd like to maybe do something here at the high school for the kids that can't fit it into their schedule because they're in KTC or they're taking college classes, or so they don't have an hour, a free hour, they can still get a part of that. And then we also are looking at maybe doing a version of the first Lego League at maybe Peterborough and Parker, which are our 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade centers. And so starting to get them involved in their after-school program and maybe eventually becoming a class there as well in the long term. But getting them involved at a younger age, selfishly that benefits us because they've got 2, 3, 4 years experience before they get to us. And so we're not having to teach as much of what this is a motor, this is a, you know, whatever. So they have some experience with coding and stuff coming in, but more importantly, they could potentially have as many as 8 years experience in an engineering or coding related field. And then ultimately, the coding aspect of it, we have our pre-K center is already doing some really fundamental coding activities. And so our goal is to get pre-K to 12th grade a coding strand, just like a math and an English strand, going all the way through. And so this is the first step to doing that.
Cool. Well, lots of exciting things. I mean, it seems like you've got a ton going on right now, but it also seems like this is just the runway to a whole bunch of new stuff. I'm going to ask you one question, but before we get there, so the question's going to be, what did I not ask you? But I'll give you some time to think about that. Do want to, for listeners that are listening, go, man, this is great, how can I support this? I do want to do a quick commercial for a program that the Resource Center has, we call the Catalyst Education Fund. So by all means, if you want to support this work, you can reach out to McAlester High School, and I've got a feeling Dewayne might take a check.
I'll take the phone call and the check.
Yeah, but a way to, for donors to really max out, and this is the giving season, right? This is the holiday season, is we have a program called the Catalyst Education Fund, where you can earmark your dollars for a qualified school. Any school in a district with less than 4,500 students is qualified, and then needs to be working with the Resource Center, which McAllister's a member. And then we don't charge an administrative fee at all. We work with the school to meet the tax commission requirements for granting the dollars to the school. Every dollar would go into robotics and aviation and all of these innovative programs that they've got. And the tax credit benefits are, if it's a one-time donation, the state offers a 50% tax credit. If you make it a two-time donation 2 years in a row, that tax credit goes to 75%. So, meaning between your federal deduction and the state tax credit, it's a minimal amount of money that actually is out of pocket for the donor long term. So we hope that, I know that the resources aren't unlimited for the school to do this work, and this is the exact type of work that we hope to support with the Catalyst Education Fund. But so with that long lead in, then I could sit here and talk to you for hours, so I might get in trouble if I do that. So what are the things have I not asked you? What were the things? Oh, this is what I want to make sure folks hear.
Well, I think the biggest thing maybe we've touched on a little bit is the why we're doing what we're doing. And I will tell you, being a product, being born in the majority of the time raised in McAlester, Oklahoma, a product from McAlester, Oklahoma. I just saw a stat not too long ago where they did research and they realized that they came out that McAlester was the 3rd most dangerous city to live in Oklahoma. And, our median, well, our median income is lower than the state average and the national average. Our incarceration rate is high. We have the federal prison here. So McAlester is known for a lot of negative things. And at times our community has taken on that persona. And my thing, and our kids have taken on that persona that we're just from McAlester, so we're just going to go get a 9-to-5 job and we're just going to go make minimum wage. The why is that cycle doesn't have to be continuous. And so we want to give kids as many resources as possible. And if that means that I work 100 hours a week to do it, that's what it takes for me. personally, on a personal note, I want to give these kids the opportunity to expand and say, I'm not just going to be a product of Southeastern Oklahoma and live in that cycle. I'm going to go and do, and I'm going to do more. I'm going to be better than what my parents were or what my lineage has been. I'm going to go be a first-year college student. I'm going to go be a first-year college graduate. I'm going to go to NASA and work. I'm going to go to Boeing and work. I want them to understand that the sky's the limit on their potential and to realize that the only person that's stopping them is themselves. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why we're putting in the time and writing for the grants and doing everything we're doing and sacrificing, like I told you, my marriage coming up, time with my fiance, a lot of time with my fiance, and
I've been through wedding planning, you're not missing out.
she is an absolute,
Yeah.
she's an absolute angel for having put up with me in all of this, but
That's fantastic.
sacrificing the time to do this is because these kids need these opportunities.
Well, and I'd like to piggyback off of that because at the beginning of the year, I shared with the faculty, I had them bring the most important item to them, to the faculty, to the introductory faculty meeting. And I shared with them that mine was my high school diploma because I wanted them to know what their why was. And for me, my why was because my dad was a high school dropout. And so I said, my why, the reason I'm here is because I'm looking in the school for people who are just like my dad, And that's a big reason why we're here. We want parents to look at us and say, man, if I send my kid to McAlester High School, not only are they going to have multiple opportunities to grow in multiple different areas, but they're going to walk out of here truly college and career ready. And we want to be, as to borrow a phrase, he said, the hub of that. We want to be the diamond here in Southeast Oklahoma that people want to bring their kids here. And that's, from an administrative side, that's what we want. We want people to understand that we have a lot to offer, and there's a reason you should be proud to be a Buffalo. And
There you go.
so
That's, I gotta say, guys, you've inspired me today. Coming down on a Friday with not much sleep. This has been an exciting conversation, and yeah, you guys can be commended. Dwayne, you guys got the right guy in the program, clearly leading this innovation.
we're proud of him.
But yeah, it's fun to hear this stuff. I mean, we know there's great things going on in schools. We know there can be great things, and I think a lot of that is just that mindset. So hope that listeners have been inspired, and then we hope that listeners go off and have a Buffalo day.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.